We are going to be painting this covered bridge. Um, I'm going to start off with a wet surface, and as you can see, you can follow along with a little inset picture. Um, I'm using, instead of a gray or a blue, I'm actually using a lavender color for the gray sky. Now, it might not look gray in the picture. Obviously, it's washed out a great deal. A lot of the lights kind of faded. So I'm adding a bit more of this color in here, just as a base, almost as if you were going to work on a toned canvas, if you were oil painting. What this is going to do is it's going to set the stage for um, the next washes, as we get a little darker, as we get richer in color. Here I'm just adding in some um, basically some greens. There's some purples in there that pick up on the lavender sky. I wet that little area there, just so those trees in the distance look like they're muted and basically out of focus. That's what we're trying to go for here. So the wet into wet gives the watercolor artist the ability to just smudge out the edges. It's a great technique, and it should be used more often, especially on scenes that have a hazy or foggy atmosphere. Here now I'm just going in for the trees, leaving some holes in here. Basically, as far as the colors are concerned, I use a lot of different ones in here, mainly sap green, ultramarine blue. There's probably a little, that's probably a little bit of a red with burnt sienna. There's a lot of different colors. Now, the reason why I dropped that color in was because that color is going to work in with the color of the barn later on. So in all painting, not just watercolor, you try to pick up colors from other areas in the painting to create a just a feeling of connectivity amongst the shapes. Very helpful in painting, and it also, ties in the picture visually. You might not realize it when you're looking at a painting, but a lot of times those colors do pick up, and just kind of gives harmony, more harmony to the painting. So here I'm working down around, if you see the stone wall, actually that's creating like a foundation for the other side of the bridge. It's kind of like a rock color, like a grayish blue. And I'm adding more color. I wanted to get that a little bit darker, that whole area, because I want the the covered bridge to jump out and contrast. So here I'm painting in the water, and as you can see, I'm going quite dark. I mean, this is going to be the first wash, even though, yes, it's actually the second wash technically, but this is the first wash of a big color that we're putting in. So as we're working in the negative, we're painting around the shapes. Try to do this in one, in one motion, or well, maybe more than one motion, but you try to get everything done while it's wet into wet. You can do that just by pre-mixing a lot of color so that you know that you won't run out there. And so here I'm massing in some of the lawn shapes in the foreground. Nothing crazy here, just again sap green, probably a little burnt sienna, which I'm adding in now. You never want to just have like one color. You always want to, as a color is wet, drop in, the complementary. So in this case, where we have this like a natural green, we wanted a natural brown color to complement those colors. So this way, again, we're picking up colors from all over. We're not isolating color. Um, that's, sometimes you'll see, people who just start out, they feel that they see one color, they don't see other colors in there until they start to really open their eyes to observing. And even in a photograph, you can see there's clearly a lot of color other than simply the green. Okay, so I'm talking about the lawn, I'm talking about the trees in the background. And as you can see, I'm working on almost like a wet into wet ghosting of the barn just to get the first layer. Sometimes you can get the color in all at once in the first wash. I did not. Um, I it looks nice and red when you put it down, but obviously it's not red enough when it dries. So here we just have to go over it once more, and that happens. I'm adding here some darks. Actually, as that was drying, I went over and actually the second wash, and then I had to do a third wash, which is the recess of the inside of the covered bridge. Now I'll start to do accents on the and put the windows down after um, the roof is in place. Um, and here we go. And you don't have to get crazy detailed. There's a lot of stuff going on, I realize, but less is more. You want to try to keep everything very fluid, loose. Notice the windows, how they're not really windows. They almost look like abbreviated rectangles or squares. Well, that's to show that there's one side has a little light, one side is obviously dark. So the corner that establishes the dark shadow is going to be a complete corner. The other corner could be suggestive, which is what's happening there. And if you look at the whole thing, you'll see that, yeah, that looks like a window, right? So think of those things when you're painting. Try to think of ways to truncate, reduce detail whenever you can. Now here I just added a little bit of water there because I want the illusion of the water falling downward. And as you can see, I'm holding the paper, actually it's the whole block, upside down. Well, not upside down, on an angle. So it just comes down. And you can see water's just flowing downward. That's it. There's no great secret to this. Sometimes you have to hit it bluntly on the surface just to help the water drip down. Now here, there's a little tool. You can use like a penny nail or something. What it does is just takes out little rivulets or little waves in the water. That's about it. You could use the side of a credit card or a piece of plastic, or even be careful. You can use a palette knife or a razor blade. Now I'm just adding some detail or suggestive detail, I should say. Where the crags of the rocks, the separation of the rocks, without painting every little rock, you just paint the negative. So I'm painting actually in between the rocks, and then your mind's eye will bring everything together. That's that little blemish there is actually that greenish, yellowish spot. And there, another thing too, quickly, yeah, you put the color down on those posts and then you dab it out just to give it a look of, I don't know, so they look like they're not too dark and they're not too static and they're not too perfect, right? That one, by lifting up that little bit on those posts, gave them like a weathered look, right? So these are the things that you have to look at when you're trying to simplify without going back in and adding another layer, which you don't need to do. Sometimes extracting color off of a surface may give you a texture. Usually it does. And here I'm just going for some darker accents in the water. And now I'm finishing up that little tree shape. Yeah, there's kind of like a little bushes and things there. If now notice too, every once in a while you'll see me dabbing things with a paper towel. When you put a line down, you're not married to it. Doesn't it's not written in stone. All you do is just tap it out. Don't don't freak out that, oh my goodness, I can't get that light again. Yeah, you can. As long as it's wet, you can extract it up. Don't let it sit there too long, because if you do, yeah, then you're gonna have a stain, or your darks are gonna be a little too dark. Um, this is something with experience. After a while, you'll just know that, okay, well, that dark wasn't so dark. I could have left it, or I could have blotted it out, right? And after a while, you'll just know. Plus, you also want to make sure that the darks that you put on are not. Sorry about the shaking. Um, that don't get too dark, especially in places that are midground or background. You want to have a hierarchy in values in your composition. Usually, the things that are in the foreground, in this case, not so much. All the dark shadows are kind of, we can say that the covered bridge is midground, right? But it is the focal point. So but it is closest to us. Um, yes, that's going to get darker. But if we had any elements or something in the foreground, um, I don't know, like a person, a wagon wheel, something in the foreground, it would be dark. And that's what my efforts here are, trying to get that foreground a little bit darker by putting embellishments, leaves. I mean, it looks like a late fall afternoon. Obviously, it's overcast, but just by putting these darker embellishments gave us a foreground, right? Is it in the picture exactly like that? No, it's not. But you can change things, right? They don't necessarily have to be exact. The shapes don't have to be exactly the same. Um, we already have a photograph. Why would we want to recreate that? So here, I'm trying to create, you know, my own shapes. I'm trying to create embellishments, um, and making artistic decisions. Okay, so that's what you want to do as a painter, especially if you want to work in this loose style. Now, if you want it to work very realistic, that's great too. Um, just take your time. If you were working on this scene, you'd be working over a very specific drawing. All your lines would be well connected, and your perspective would be spot on. Uh, and then you would just stay within the lines. Here, we're going the opposite way. We're kind of throwing caution to the wind, and being very spontaneous. All right. Now, if I was painting this outdoors, be exactly the same way I'm painting it now. I always want to be um, in the position where I'm thinking about, if I was painting outdoors, if I was painting in plein air, as they call it, um, how would I truncate? How would I break down my subject matter? Because I know that if I was outdoors, I would only have about an hour and a half, conservatively, to finish a painting like this. Why? Because even on a cloudy day, you have a little bit more grace. On a sunny day, you're lucky you can get an hour of sunlight. And the worst thing to do in a watercolor, or any painting for that matter, is to chase the light, which simply means as you're painting, you're moving the shadows, and that will make for like a big mess, a muddy mess. So try to, if you're working in this way, try to keep your try to keep everything spontaneous, try to go quickly but accurately too, right? You don't want to lose accuracy for sloppy drawing either. So a lot of people say that this is a harder way to paint, because you're making artistic decisions. Your embellishments are definitely not photographic, so you're creating shapes that really don't exist, all for the look, the aesthetic of the painting. All right, so now getting into the trees. This is like the the moment of truth, right? Here you're putting in these dark shapes over this pristine white, or I should say lavender color in the background. But it's always a little nerve-wracking. But try to stay close to the shapes. Keep them, like what we're doing here. Keep them loose. Keep them fluid. As you can see, I moved over to a rigger brush. Now, if you guys don't know what a rigger brush is, if you painted tall ships, you'll know what a rigger brush is. It's all those little lines and rigs, whatever, on a sailboat or a tall ship. They're perfect for that. They're actually very good for anything line, linear, little tiny lines like this, and you could go quickly with them. And you can, if you control it, you can get a very fluid long line, as in a sailboat's rigging. All right, so here, as far as the colors are concerned, pretty much burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and I'm seeing opportunities where I can add a little bit of a light tone, and yes, I'm adding a little tiny bit of white to my permanent green and yellow mixture, just to give us that little bit of illusion of leaves in the foreground. Okay, it just needs that little extra dimension. Same thing here too, right over the opening of the bridge. We can see a few little, little green holdout leaves there. These are the things that make, the painting look interesting, right? It just gives you that little extra detail without being too crazy detailed. Notice that, yes, this video is sped up 4 times its speed, but I'm working very quickly nonetheless. You can, now here I'm adding just some accent notes. I think I go back to the windows, I'm not sure, but maybe not. But just looking at some of the little detail, here we go, some the little ropes holding everything in so people don't fall into the river. Now this was, notice how that dries so quickly. Now the reason for that is I'm painting over a very dark pigment, right? And that's what's causing that that paint to dry that quick. So I'm seeing that there's some reflections, and I'm going to take this opportunity to bring some of those colors in and wet them, and no one would know the difference. Well, then here it is. That's the final. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and you'll be seeing more videos in the future. Thanks. Have a great day.